Hi, everybody. It's Matt Hawes of Comics Unlimited in Evansville, Indiana, located inside the Cowboy Jim's Vendor Mall at 850 South Green River Road. And they open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And this video, it's not just being used to promote that place and my booth. It's also to use this first part. I'm going to get a little topical because after this next week, it will be data information, but right now it's the most priority, most urgent information that you might want to hear if you're in the Evansville area. And that is that there's going to be free comic book day on May 6th of 2023. And that's Saturday. That's this coming Saturday as I record this. And I'm going to have a bunch of books that I'm going to hand out for free to people who come by the booth. But I'm also going to, it's a special selection, by the way. And also I'm going to have a sale on select the back issues, like the dollar books and some of the price books. I'm going to have 25% off sale on those. And so you won't want to miss out. It's that one day only event, even though I will be there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but free comic book day is Saturday. So don't miss out that. And if you still have a chance, go ahead and come by Friday and Sunday too. But anyway, I wanted to go ahead and also use this video to talk about something that's not as topical or something that's not of urgency as far as information goes. But it's about my time where I spent doing artwork for this publication called Comics Feature Magazine. Now, that's not my artwork on the cover. I didn't do any of the covers during my run on this title, but I was still in high school during this period. It was 1986 through 87. And what happened is Comics Feature was kind of a fanzine of sorts, but I mean, it was an informational publication that was about news and stuff. There would be later a publication called Wizard. You could think of this as kind of like an early version of what Wizard would be without the irreverent humor that it had or the price guide, but it was a way of keeping people up to date on the industry and had different articles about the comics and new stuff coming and such like that. And I would buy this magazine from the newsstand here in town. And when I say newsstand, it's actually a bookstore, but anyway. So I was basically a fan of the publication. And I noted that they had a shift in art directors at one point. I decided I was going to take advantage of that by submitting some artwork to see if they'd be interested in my work. And it turned out to be kind of, I mean, the end result is I got a job with them because they did ask me to submit a little bit more than my first submission because they wanted to stuff of a more cartoony nature. And so I did so, and then they eventually hired me. They sent me a contract and had me sign it, a handwritten contract. It was kind of funny. But they knew I was in high school and I wasn't paid extravagantly. In fact, I was paid $5 per illustration on most of the articles I did work on. It was a article called Collecting Comics for Fun and Profit, written by Mike Benton. And that was pretty much my regular gig. And in this first issue it's number 52, February 1987, though I drew the stuff in 86. On there it says contributing illustrator Matt Hawes. So I got mentioned right off the bat in the credits. And then Fun and Profit was, like I said, my regular feature that I did the artwork for. And I'll find it right here. Actually, they got the page wrong. There it goes. Fun and Profit. Now, there I drew a comic shop scene. Now, I was like roughly 17 years old and still going to Central High School here in Evansville. And most of these had a few pages of illustration. So it was talking about, there's, I guess, the greedy comic shop owner. Hopefully I don't come off that way, being a comic shop owner of myself and a comic vendor, but talking about the prices going up and down and all that, and talking all about collecting comics. And that was the first one. I guess that was the only illustrations in that one I did. And before I go to the second issue, because there's about, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 issues. The last 6 issues of Comics Feature, I had my illustrations in that article. And in the meantime, they asked me roughly around the time I was doing the first couple of those issues if I would do the cover illustration for Comics File Magazine Spotlight on G.I. Joe, The Nam, Merc, and Frontline Combat File. That's a lengthy title. Because officially, I guess that is the full title. Anytime you search for it, but you can sometimes find it, but just by putting Comics File Magazine Spotlight on G.I. Joe. Still kind of lengthy title, even dropping the other names there. So I drew this, but did not color it because I would not have colored Dr. Mindbender all pink. But I did this wraparound cover that was for this publication. Now here's a bit of trivia. I was one of the few people around that age range at that time or younger that wasn't watching G.I. Joe. So I actually needed to get reference to draw these characters because I didn't know what they looked like. There was no Google back then. There was no internet, certainly not in the domestic sense back then. And so they actually had to send me reference, and anyway, I just thought that was kind of funny because, most people around my age watched the cartoon, it seemed, and would have been familiar. This was the next issue of Comics Feature that I did. Again, I didn't do the covers. I just did the Fun and Profit articles and a few special spots that you'll see here in a second. But with the second one, they wanted me to draw more cartoony as a rule. And when I first sent my submissions, like I said, I drew more standard, like the superhero standard kind of realism. But they went a little cartoonier than I guess that. So when I did my second submission, that was more cartoony. Well, therefore, in here, like the kid there is drawn more cartoony than like I did the other kids in the previous issue. And he's on top of a bunch of comics, stacks of comics they're reading. And then the other kid deciding about his collection and everything. These were so the articles usually just tips on about collecting. And I was told usually what to put in this spot. They had an idea what they want me to do. There's the professor that I drew, and this was a little bit more with the standard superhero thing. But this was a column about the British are coming, which was talking about writers like Grant Morrison and Alan Moore when they were first coming into the American comic books. And so I was told to make a kind of British hero on top of a heap, I guess, of American heroes there. And as I remember correctly, I just chose which ones, but of course it's the bigger name characters. Then we go with the next issue. This is 54. And I'll show you some of the artwork from this one. Make sure I'm not missing something here. Like in the beginning, okay, yeah. So there's Spider-Man burning money, lighting a cigar with it. I don't know how obvious that was a dollar bill in his hand, though, but let's see. And then this is interesting here because show this rich dude turning down investments and stocks for comic books. And if you look at what looks like gray tones and stuff, that's actually Zipatone. And I mentioned this because that was a thing that comic books, especially black and white comics, a lot of the artists would use. And it's kind of gone by the wayside in the computer age. But I remember feeling like, I'm drawing like a real artist because I had Zipatone, because there was a comic, or rather an art supply shop that opened up in my general area that I could walk to and grab actual supplies like that. And so I first start using Zipatone. Anyway, there's another drawing from it. And so far, some of these first few, most of the time I'm drawing just like, a collector or somebody. But here's some superheroes too on a totem pole there that I drew. And somebody who I was just talking to, a friend of mine, was just asking me, did they tell you to draw Ant-Man? Because he thought it was funny Ant-Man was included in that lineup. And honestly, I forgot, but I don't think they did. I mean, they usually instructed me what to draw, like I said, as far as give me a general idea, but they probably just said we want, the Indian Native American there looking at a totem pole with the heads of several Marvel and I didn't draw any DC characters, I guess. They're all Marvel characters. Oh, because it was about Marvel. Okay, but I don't know if Ant-Man. Let me see if Ant-Man's on that list. Actually, Tales to Astonish was on that list, so it's possible they did tell me to draw Ant-Man. Now that I see it, I didn't know if that was just my own choice because I did like the helmet, the one that he wore that was designed by Jack Kirby. I always kind of liked the way it looked. So, but anyway, so then we go to this next issue. This is the issue 55. What's funny is you can actually find a lot of these issues looking them up on eBay. And they run the gamut on what they cost. Some people are only asking $5. Some people are asking $20, $30 or whatever. So if you want to buy and get some of the early Matt Hall's art, here you go. This is one that I was a little bit more ambitious about because they want me to draw a guy drowning in a sea of reprints. And the layout, as I remember from the art director, was just a rough draft of a rough sketch of just some fellow and a bunch of little squares to represent comics. So that's what I did. I went ahead and made the guy there in the center drowning. And it was about reprint, so that's why there's a frame on each cover that says reprint. I'd later recreate this for my shop, only not mentioning the reprint part, just made it look like the guy's drowning in comics, but I made him happy about it. Rather than looking like that. But I would draw, in this original version, drew little funny things on each cover. Like there's the Blue Beetle, which is actually like the musical group, the Beatles. Go, she loves you, yeah, yeah. I slipped in little things like there's a Dr. Demento reference in here because I was a fan. I am a fan of Dr. Demento. And so I drew little in jokes. There's a book named after my pet dog in there too that I had at the time. And they're talking about grinding out the comics in the reprints. As I understand it, that one picture, the publisher, I think, liked it well enough that he made a poster of it himself, which was kind of neat. They put in his office. And then there's a thing about kid backed up against the wall by reprints. So this whole article was about reprints, obviously. There's another one, which, the guy trying to sell the kid a reprint, shady dealer. And then the Hulk lifting up a list of things. Now, Hulk, he has those little black shorts there. The reason for that is because at that era, he didn't have his ripped pants in the book so much. He had those black shorts. So if somebody sees that and wonders why that looks like that, that's why. It was my drawing, but that's how he was dressed at that moment. It was right before Tom McFarlane got on the title. Then we got number 56. That's the penultimate issue, I guess, of the comics feature. And I did a couple other publications where I did some illustration for them, but this is the second to last of the original thing. And there's a few kind of neat things in this issue. Like, there's this character, and once again, I did not do the colors because they gave him pink gloves and pink boots, and I would not have given the character pink gloves and pink boots. But see, he's coming out of a computer, if you know this, but it's a computer, definitely an old-fashioned computer, got a floppy disk drives, because the editorial, I was asked to do this special illustration for the editorial, was about how they went to lay out the book and stuff on computer for the first time. To show you how old this is, they were still doing things the old-fashioned way, and they just did get computers at the offices. Now, like I said, this is the second to last issue, so it's kind of sad that they didn't have too long before the end of the series after they had gotten computers set up for it. Then there's an article, if this be the one, where I drew a Superman-esque character and a bunch of other kind of characters, derivative for comical effect of other existing characters, except for this guy. He's just somebody I pulled out my head into her. But anyway, they're kind of looking down at that guy and like, yeah, well, whatever. So this is the book has to do with number one issues. And this is something I learned that in the future would become a reality for me, where somebody says, "How low will you go on the book?" And that's supposed to be the comic book dealer kind of fuming about being asked to go down on the price. Now, don't get me wrong. Anybody who shops with me, I'm fine with especially when somebody spends a good amount. I don't mind making deals and discounts, but there are those people don't seem to ever be happy unless you give them a deep discount. Anyway, and then this is a thing I did where number one, I did a double page spread. It was supposed to represent number one books published from March through November 1986 in the comic book industry. And so this is the first and maybe last time on some characters I ever drew some of these characters. Anyway, like I said, a huge list of them, and I was given the list of the characters included in this picture. They just want me to do like a crowd scene. So what I had them do is they all hold up a little placard or whatever that says the name of the books that they have that they were starring in. That was a first issue for that time period. Anyway, I would later colorize that or color it on the computer in Photoshop, but that was many years later. Okay, so now we come to the final issue of Comics Feature and the final issue that I drew of Comics Feature with a Punisher cover, coincidentally drawn by Klaus Johnson, or Janssen, however you would say his name, but Janssen. I've heard pronounced other ways. Which the reason I bring that up is like the artists on the previous covers. I'll go ahead and recognize his name because I forget his name off the top of my head, but give him some recognition here because he was the one who drew the covers for all those other issues. And Martin Cannon, and I never met him, but he was drawing before I started on the book and drew almost to the very end. And I just assumed he was another young illustrator at the time. I don't know if he was as young as me, but like he was still in high school. But I know he was drawing on some of those covers on a regular thing. I don't think he ever did any other work in the industry that was that sold for any certain levels, because I never recognized his name on any Marvel or DC books, or never saw it on any. Anyway, but hopefully he had a still continue art career or what have you. So anyway, I did this last Fun Profit. They were talking about the 70s. So you got the Thing in a disco outfit, pulling the John Travolta pose. And then that guy who's trying to get rid of some 1970s comics, which is funny because they were kind of dumping on the 70s comics in a sense in this article, where now there's more like a lot of appreciation for that era. And a lot of those books go for quite a bit of money now. And then you see the character there who's done on the 70s wearing a goofy version of a members only type jacket of the era of the 80s, kind of helping date my drawing there. There you got Howard the Duck sitting on an egg. He laid an egg. I'm talking. And then Captain Marvel being escorted into oblivion by death. And then I think there's one last bit here. And I was told what to draw here, so this does not represent my own opinion about the characters of the books. But he basically had Moon Boy, Devil Dinosaur, and the original Captain Marvel. But they're referring to the 70s series of Shazam. And the guy got, that stinks. Me personally, I like a lot of stuff. And again, a lot of people now show appreciation for it. But there was a time where the generation that was writing these articles at the time were a little snobbish. They grew up in the 60s and kind of thought this, that nothing ever stank in their era. So they tend to think everything stank in the eras after. And there's a lot of great stuff from the 60s. I'm a fan of a lot of movies and TV shows, but there was some crap. And not everything in the 70s was crap, or 80s. But Anyway, we got the collector's Critics' Choice file looks at the X-Men. That's number one. Again, I did not do the cover. This cover is Jim Keegan, who was the art director of the book. Ruth Kennedy was the other art director with him. And in here, I did several illustrations at the top corner there. There's Thunderbird on an airplane. And basically just going by a synopsis of each issue of what was then called the New X-Men, the Uncanny X-Men, from 94 up to a specific point here. And these are, like I said, just an illustration about each issue that represented that story. Let's see. Goes through the whole length of the book there. So, when I was drawing those, they approached me about drawing one of the other few covers I did. I only did 2 covers. I did that G.I. Joe cover earlier. And then there was a publication, Comics Feature Presents Superheroes. It was on a separate magazine. And like I said, it was roughly about the same time I was illustrating this book, if I recall correctly. And again, still being high school, as I mentioned earlier, I had a deadline to meet, and I kind of was pushing things. Back then, I think fax machines were starting to be a thing, but I didn't have one. And so there was no other way to get stuff quickly other than their snail mail. You could do FedEx and all that. I mean, you could do priority type mail, but there was no sending over files on a computer or whatever. So I was on this time crunch, and I was drawing all those pictures for that, plus the regular comics feature article, plus this issue of superheroes I was talking about. And so they wanted me to do the cover. Well, like a dope, I wait until the last minute to do the cover. Not that I want any of the work to have suffered, but this is a time where I did not stay up late. I was going to high school and everything, so I did not normally stay up late, but here I was on a weekend night, staying up to 2 a.m. in the morning, and I was kind of bleary-eyed and everything, trying to draw this cover. So to me, it's kind of shoddy, and I'm not too proud of it, but that's the cover. So I did that for the publication. Ugh. Anyway, but that's my excuse for why it looks as bad as it does. And then this other publication is the second Critics' Choice file. It looks at the X-Men. That's a John Byrne drawing on the cover. And what's funny about this is I did not realize this got published, because all those other issues I showed you, they would always send me complimentary copies of each issue. And they were pretty generous. I used to got about 4 or 5 of them. And they also would send back my original art and that sort of thing. Now, I did get sent back my original art for this book, but I didn't realize it ever got published, and they never had any comp copies. What had happened is I went to a comic book convention. This was many years later. I already was out of high school. I owned my own business. I had owned the Comics Unlimited as a comic shop. And this was sometime probably in the early 2000s. I don't remember exactly the year. But in the early 2000s, I came across this book at one of the conventions. And it had $5 on it. And I was like, wait a minute. That's the same title as the other book that I did. Could it be that it has my art on the inside? And actually, yeah, it did. And yeah, it's not the best work, but it was the artwork that I did was on the inside. And so I was happy to get that. And I wanted to make sure I didn't say nothing until after I bought it about it being my artwork on the inside, just in case the dealer thought that would mean that I'd pay more. I didn't want to take a chance on that. So there's different illustrations from the interiors. Wolverine gets slammed by Sasquatch. So yeah, go through this a little quickly here. You got Gene about getting ready to be attacked by Mutant X. And there's more of McTaggart. So anyway, that was that. And after that, I had one other thing I was going to do with the art directors who had, by this point, parted company with the publisher. And the publisher, Hal Schuster, I'm not sure if I remember correctly what he did afterwards. I think he had a company called Pied Piper Comics, but I can't remember if that was before or after my period with the company. And they wanted me to do cover for a role-playing game. And I actually did do the sketches for one. And then never heard back from them. I think it just all fell apart. And a couple years later after that, a guy had got my address. I had already moved on my own by this point of time after I left, after I stopped drawing for them. A couple of years later, I'd moved out on my own and such from my parents' house. And but I got a letter forwarded to me that was from James Van Heist, who he's a writer who wrote for Now Comics and a few other things. And he also wrote articles for Comics Feature, though not the one I illustrated. And he was wanting to get somebody to draw the book he was doing for Now Comics at that time. And like an idiot, I just basically never got around to sending him any of my artwork because I think, if I remember correctly, I think he wanted samples and stuff, even though he saw my artwork for the book just to see if I'd want to do the book. But I never got around to it, so that was the last time I had any contact to any degree, really, with these people from that publication. But I guess that's about it then. I just wanted to show you the history there of my first published work back in the 1980s. And that's it. So just a reminder, if it's not already past the date that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, May 6th, 2023, and you're in the area, stop by Comics Unlimited booth located inside Cowboy Jim's Vendor Mall and see what I got. Yay!